The cabin lights glowed softly against polished panels as passengers settled into their seats. Unaware that the tension in the cockpit doorway was about to fracture the calm illusion of first class, Captain Nia Reynolds stood tall in her crisp white uniform, gold stripes gleaming against her dark skin, reviewing pre-flight data on the tablet in her hand. She had spent 15 years earning that uniform, 15 years breaking barriers in a sky that rarely welcomed women who looked like her. Behind her, the cockpit door remained open while final preparations were made. She preferred it that way before departure. It reminded her that she belonged here. A sharp voice sliced through the quiet. "Excuse me, you can't be in here." Nia turned slowly. A blonde flight attendant, perfectly pressed navy blazer, red scarf tied tightly at her throat, stood with one manicured hand planted on her hip. Her expression carried the confident authority of someone who believed she never had to question her assumptions. "I'm sorry," Nia asked evenly. "This area is restricted," the attendant continued, lowering her voice as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Passengers need to remain seated. The economy is toward the back." The words hung between them. Nia blinked once, not because she didn't understand, but because she was choosing her response carefully. "I'm aware of where economy is," she said. The attendant's eyes flicked over her uniform, lingering briefly on the stripes as though they were decorative, not earned. "Are you with catering or cleaning staff? Boarding isn't finished yet." The cockpit grew quieter. First Officer Daniel Harper, seated inside, stiffened but said nothing. Nia held the woman's gaze. "I'm the captain of this aircraft." A small, incredulous laugh escaped the attendant's lips. "Ma'am, please, we're on a schedule." Passengers in first class began to notice the exchange. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A young girl across the aisle stared openly. "I said," Nia repeated, her tone calm but firm. "I am Captain Reynolds." The attendant's smile thinned. "If you don't step back immediately, I'll have to call security." Security? The word struck something old and familiar in Nia's chest. She remembered being 13 and followed through a department store, 22, and mistaken for hotel housekeeping at a conference she was speaking at, 30, and asked if she was lost while walking through an airport in uniform for the first time. 15 years, thousands of flight hours, and still, I suggest, Nia said quietly, you checked the crew manifest. The attendant hesitated, irritation flashing across her face. She pulled out her tablet, tapping aggressively. Her eyes skimmed the screen. Her posture changed. Color drained from her cheeks. Captain Nia Reynolds, aircraft commander. The silence that followed was suffocating. I wasn't informed, the attendant muttered. You were informed. Daniel spoke from the cockpit, unable to remain quiet. It was in the briefing packet. A murmur rippled through first class. The attendant straightened, attempting to recover dignity. There must have been a misunderstanding. There wasn't, Nia replied. She stepped forward into the cockpit, taking her seat with measured composure. The power dynamic shifted instantly, but the sting lingered. As boarding finished, Nia ran through the departure checklist, her voice steady over the intercom. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard. The moment she spoke, passengers exchanged surprised glances. Some smiled. Others leaned closer to confirm what they were hearing. The attendant who had challenged her stood near the galley, stiff and silent. The aircraft pushed back from the gate, engines roaring to life. But the incident didn't end there. Midway through the flight, turbulence rattled the cabin unexpectedly. Overhead bins creaked. A few gasps echoed from the rear. Nia handled it effortlessly, adjusting altitude with practiced precision. She had flown through worse. After the turbulence subsided, Daniel glanced sideways. You okay? She nodded once. I've been through worse. Yet the humiliation simmered beneath her calm exterior. Not because she doubted herself, but because she was tired of proving herself. When the seatbelt sign turned off, the attendant requested permission to enter the cockpit. Nia allowed it. The woman stepped inside, hands clasped tightly. Without the earlier arrogance, she seemed smaller. I owe you an apology, she began. Nia didn't respond immediately. I made an assumption, the attendant continued. It was unprofessional. It was more than unprofessional, Nia said softly. It was disrespectful. The attendant swallowed. You're right. Do you know how many times I've been mistaken for someone who doesn't below? Nia asked. Every year. Every airport. Every new crew. The attendant's eyes flickered downward. You saw my skin before you saw my stripes, Nia said. The truth landed heavily in the cramped cockpit. I didn't think. That's the problem, Nia interrupted gently. You didn't think. Outside, clouds drifted peacefully, unaware of the storm that had passed inside the cabin. The attendant nodded slowly. I'll report myself to the chief purser. That's your decision, Nia replied. But growth matters more than punishment. The attendant looked up, surprised. I don't need your humiliation, Nia continued. I need your awareness. Hours later, the plane began its descent. As the landing gear lowered and the runway approached, Nia felt the familiar rush of focus. The aircraft touched down smoothly, applause breaking out from several passengers. At the gate, as travelers stood to disembark, a small voice called out, Captain! Nia turned. The young girl from first class stood beside her mother, eyes wide with admiration. Are you really the pilot? She asked. Yes, Nia smiled. I didn't know girls could do that. Nia crouched slightly to meet her gaze. Girls can do anything. The girl's mother mouthed a silent thank you. As passengers exited, a few paused to shake Nia's hand. Word of the earlier confrontation had spread quietly through whispers. The attendant remained near the doorway, greeting guests with forced composure. When the cabin finally emptied, she approached Nia again. I've submitted a report, she said, and I've asked to attend bias training. Nia studied her for a long moment. That's a start. The crew dispersed, but airport staff had already heard rumors. A gate agent offered Nia a look of solidarity. A mechanic nodded respectfully. Yet Nia knew this wasn't about one attendant. It was about a culture where authority still defaulted to certain faces. Later that evening, a passenger's video of the confrontation surfaced online. Someone in first class had recorded the moment the attendant threatened to call security. The clip went viral overnight. Millions watched the composed captain calmly asserting her title. Millions read comments dissecting the flight attendant's expression. News outlets reached out for statements. Nia declined interviews. Instead, she returned to work. Days later, the airline announced expanded diversity initiatives. Internal emails circulated reminding staff to review crew manifests thoroughly before boarding, but policy changes were small victories. The real impact came from messages flooding Nia's inbox. Young women of color thanking her for standing firm. Veteran pilots sharing their own stories of doubt and dismissal. Parents sending photos of daughters pretending to fly planes in living rooms. One message stood out. I was on your flight. It read, my son asked why the lady didn't believe you were captain. I didn't know how to explain it. Thank you for handling it. With grace. That word followed Nia for weeks. Yet grace did not erase exhaustion. One evening, alone in her apartment, she removed her cap and stared at her reflection. She loved flying, loved the hum of engines and the vastness of sky. But she wondered how long she would have to carry both her profession and the burden of representation. Her phone buzzed. A notification from the airline. The flight attendant had requested to personally apologize again, this time in a staff meeting. Nia agreed. In the meeting room, surrounded by uniformed colleagues, the attendant stood at the front. I judged based on appearance, she admitted. I diminished someone's authority because it didn't match what I expected. That ends with me. The room was silent. Nia stepped forward. We all carry bias, she said. What matters is what we do when it's revealed. The chief pilot nodded approvingly. Afterward, several crew members approached Nia privately, confessing their own blind spots. Conversations began that had long been avoided. Months passed. The viral clips slowly faded from headlines, replaced by new scandals and new outrage. But something subtle had shifted. On subsequent flights, Nia noticed fewer double takes, fewer surprised expressions when she introduced herself as captain. Not none, but fewer. One afternoon, as she prepared for departure on another route, a new flight attendant approached her. Captain Reynolds, the young woman asked respectfully. It's an honor to fly with you. Nia smiled. Let's have a smooth one. As she settled into the cockpit once more, sunlight streamed through the windshield, illuminating the controls. She thought about the moment in the doorway weeks earlier, the disbelief, the threat of security, the weight of assumption. She also thought about the little girl's voice. Girls can do anything. The engines powered up, vibrations steady and strong. Before takeoff, Nia's voice carried through the cabin again. "This is your captain speaking." This time, there was no hesitation in the air, no confusion, only confidence. The aircraft surged down the runway and lifted into open sky. Up there, above clouds and prejudice alike, authority wasn't questioned. Skill mattered, precision mattered, and Nia Reynolds, captain, commanded both. The aircraft climbed steadily, slicing through layers of cloud until the sky opened into endless blue. Up here, the world felt borderless. No waiting room stares, no questioning glances, just altitude and responsibility. But even at 37,000 feet, Nia knew gravity still existed. "Autopilot engaged," Daniel said. "Confirmed," she replied. For a few quiet moments, the cockpit hummed with routine efficiency. Then the cabin interphone chimed. It was the same flight attendant. Nia exchanged a brief look with Daniel before answering. "Go ahead. We have a passenger in 2A requesting to speak with the captain," the attendant said, voice carefully neutral. Nia raised an eyebrow. "Bergardi says he's concerned about experience." There it was again. Nia inhaled slowly. "Tell him the captain is fully qualified and focused on operating the aircraft safely." A pause. "He insists." Daniel exhaled sharply. Unbelievable. Nia's jaw tightened, but her voice remained composed. "I'll address it." Minutes later, she stepped into the first-class cabin. Conversations quieted immediately. The businessman in seat 2A looked up, expression uneasy. "You requested to speak with me?" Nia asked. He shifted in his seat. "Yes. I wasn't expecting." He trailed off. "Expecting what?" she prompted calmly. He cleared his throat. "Someone else." A few passengers nearby stiffened, listening closely. "I assure you," Nia said, holding his gaze, "you have someone with over 8,000 flight hours, advanced certification on this aircraft, and a flawless safety record." He flushed. "I didn't mean anything by it. Intent," she replied gently, "doesn't erase impact." The cabin was silent enough to hear the engines. "Your safety is my responsibility," she continued, "and I take that seriously." The man nodded, shrinking into his seat. "Of course. Thank you, Captain." She inclined her head and returned to the cockpit. When she closed the door behind her, Daniel shook his head. "You handled that better than I would have." "It's not about winning," she said quietly. "It's about flying the plane." Still, the accumulation weighed on her. One assumption might be small, two might be coincidence, but layered over years, they formed something heavy. Mid-flight, turbulence returned stronger this time. The aircraft jolted sharply, overhead bins rattling. A gasp rippled through the cabin. Nia's focus sharpened instantly. "Adjusting altitude," she said. Daniel monitored instruments as she guided the aircraft smoothly through unstable air. Her hands were steady, movements precise. Years of training flowed through muscle memory. After several tense minutes, the ride stabilized. Applause broke out spontaneously. Daniel allowed himself a grin. "Well done, Captain." She nodded once. "Just doing my job." But in the cabin, something else had shifted. Later, when she made a routine announcement updating arrival time, her voice carried new weight, not surprise, not skepticism, but trust. As the plane descended toward its destination, city lights glittered below like scattered stars. After landing, the same businessman from 2A waited near the cockpit door. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "That turbulence. I've never felt calmer on a flight." Nia studied him for a moment. "The Polly accepted. And thank you," he added, "for educating me." She gave a small nod. Growth didn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it came in humbled tones. When the last passenger exited, the earlier flight attendant approached once more. "I heard about Tua," she said softly. "I should have shut that down immediately." "You can't control every thought people have," Nia replied. "But you can control how you respond to them." The attendant nodded. "I'm learning." "Good," Nia said. Back in the quiet cockpit, as ground crews moved around the aircraft, Nia removed her headset and glanced at the captain's stripes on her sleeve. They gleamed under cabin lights earned, not given. Years ago, a mentor had told her something she never forgot. When you walk into a room, don't shrink to fit it. Make the room expand. Today, she had done exactly that. The sky would never ask her to prove she belonged, but on the ground, she would keep expanding rooms,